John Leyton was an overnight sensation after his record Johnny Remember Me topped the charts for 7 weeks in 1961. For 3 years he caused mass fan hysteria before giving it all up to be an actor, making some classic movies alongside some of Hollywood's finest stars.
Johnny, remember me.
John Leyton was the first television actor to make his name as a singer when he became an overnight star after performing Johnny Remember Me on one of television's earliest soap series. Middle class and public school educated, he always remained uncomfortable with his pop star persona amongst the ragamuffin rock and rollers, despite causing mass fan hysteria.
And the rain is falling and the wind is blowing cold across the moor. I hear the voice of my darling, the girl I love and lost a year ago. Well, it's hard to believe, I know, but I hear her singing in the sign of the wind blowing in the treetops.
Would-be Rolling Stone Bill Wyman never forgot watching that television show.
I loved that record. I saw that on my grand's TV because we didn't have one. We were still on gas at our house and gas lighting, so we didn't have electricity. And I saw that and I immediately went out and bought it. So I really liked that. It was great.
It was never an intention to be a singer or a pop singer. It was always my intention to be an actor. From a very early age. In fact, my mother was on the stage, and my father, I think they were referred to in those days as stage door Johnnies. It all started in Frinton, on the East Coast. Frinton's a long time ago, but I remember quite distinctly in those early days, 43, 42, the German bombers used to come across to bomb London. And invariably they wouldn't have enough fuel, so they'd drop their bombs in Frinton and all around the East Coast.
A Nazi formation of bombers going home in a hurry is attacked by a single hurricane.
Many times you remember as a tiny child standing in the garden at Frinton watching these dogfights in the air.
Leyton's parents split up when he was 6, and he was shunted around between family, prep and public schools before ending up in London's posh private Highgate School.
I found myself sort of staying at school quite often during the holidays, which is kind of sad looking back really, but I didn't really mind at the time. When I left Highgate, I went straight into drama school and then to the Theatre Royal York. A happy days, I was up there for nearly a year. And it's a wonderful training ground because you get to play different characters every week, you learn lots of plays, and you're doing it professionally in front of an audience who are paying to see you. I came back to London to find an agent. I didn't have an agent.
Tell me, Solly, there's nothing at the moment.
No, there's nothing today for you.
Nothing today.
The sun is shining.
John's luck was about to change, and he chanced upon future management mogul Robert Stigwood, who'd just hitchhiked from Australia, hoping to make fame and fortune. Signing Leyton kick-started a career which was to embrace the Bee Gees, Eric Clapton, and West End smashes Jesus Christ Superstar, Hair and Grease.
The world is buzzing to...
Suddenly there I was, a contract artist with an agent, big time, right? And then he put me up for a role in a series called Biggles.
Hey, that's the place. Some screwy-looking building to the back of the house. Well, let's go down.
And then I was doing television. It all happened quite quickly.
How much longer do we play robbers instead of cops?
I don't know, Ginger. Let's hope our friends at the barn haven't lost interest in us.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure we were followed back here from the barn. There's a chap on Charing Cross Road seemed to be keeping pace with us. I saw his reflection a couple of times in shop windows.
Did you notice the bloke behind him?
What?
One of Gaskin's boys, I hope. I felt like the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
I remember one day Robert Stigwood said, "Can you sing?" And I said, "Well, I suppose I can. I know I'm very good in the bathroom."
Come on and fly with me, up in the sky with me, like birds upon the wing.
Another of Stigwood's signings was Mike Sarn, later to have a #1 hit with Come Outside, featuring now famous EastEnder Wendy Richards. Back then, he was just another struggling actor.
Come outside. Stigwood's idea was that if I use actors who can sing, I'm on a better wicket than singers who can act.
Stigwood put John together with another young Australian, arranger Charles Blackwell, and one of pop music's premier record producers, Joe Meek. Their first effort together was Tell Laura I Love Her.
Tell Laura I love her.
I sang a couple of songs there, and Joe Meek sort of messed around with various knobs and things and played it back, and I must say I was quite amazed at what I heard.
That cannot wait.
He could do amazing things in those days, and I actually had to ask if it was me. I said, "Are you sure that's me?"
He was the youngest driver there. The crowd roared.
Joseph Lockwood's Columbia label had the hit record of Tell Laura. He'd brought out the independent Top Rank label, which had released John Leyton's version, and stifled it, although many regarded John's the best.
How his car overturned in flames.
They threw mine in the bin, and their version went to #1. It wasn't a particularly good start to my so-called recording career.
However, Robert Stigwood wasn't about to give up on his idea that John Leyton, actor, should be a top pop star. Another song was found, Johnny Remember Me, and he was sent back in the studio with Charles Blackwell.
I used to coach him on the piano, and we tried to work out different songs for him. And then it happened that Jeff Goddard came up with a song called Johnny Remember Me, which we recorded with John.
When Johnny Remember Me came along, it was decided that, it was time for another death disc. And the original lyric of Johnny Remember Me is, "When the mists are rising and the rain is falling and the wind is blowing cold across the moor, I hear the voice of my darling, the girl I loved who died a year ago." And that's how it was originally recorded. And the BBC heard it, they liked the song, but they didn't like the fact that she died. So I had to go back in the studio and re-record it to the girl I loved and lost a year ago.
The girl I loved and lost a year ago.
It sounded different. And everybody that heard it said, "Wow, that really is a different sound."
The sound was created in Joe Meek's studio, his flat above a leather shop in London's Holloway Road.
Joe Meek was a very strange little man. He lived in this dark, dismal, dirty, smelly place. It was like his version of Dracula's castle or something like that. It was very dark and strange and weird, but these sort of marvellous sounds came out of it, these great echoey sounds, and he was the only person who could do that.
I'd never been in a recording studio anyway, so I didn't really know what it should be like, but I thought it was pretty bizarre at the time.
Two musicians who worked on that recording were ace drummer Clem Catini of the Tornadoes and young bass player Chaz Hodges, later to find fame as half of Chaz and Dave.
We were in his living room, I suppose. A girl singer was downstairs somewhere. Johnny, remember me? Never ever saw her. And the violins were somewhere else in the building. I think John Leyton, he overdubbed his voice, I think.
We go and put the backing track down, what was ever needed, like the backing track. Then John would come in and with Charles Blackwell, who would sort of coach him doing the vocal stuff, so he put the voice on afterwards. Joe used to jump from machine to machine, so I think it was easier for John in that respect, that he didn't have to actually sing on the session.
I just went in there and sung and said thank you very much and walked out again. But the end result was, particularly with Johnny Remember Me, I think was very unique and very advanced.
Despite the recording sessions, John Leyton primarily considered himself an actor. However, the two roles fatefully collided when he was cast as pop star Johnny Sincere in television's Harper's West 1 about life in a London department store. Having a record in the can was about to change his life.
How are you, Mr. Gilmore? How are you?
I believe it was Robert Stigwood who suggested that the character Johnny Sincere sung his latest recording when he opened up the record department.
You all right, Johnny? Sure, I'm all right. Just a minute. When the birds come in, turn it on pretty strong, but not too strong. I don't want you overdoing it, but you know what to do, you know what I mean?
I know what I'm doing.
Of course you do. Just remember, we're here to make money. Am I complaining?
I played the role of Johnny Sincere, and I sang Johnny Remember Me on the show.
But as long as I know I'll hear her singing in the side of the wind, blowing in the treetops, way above me.
Song goes, yes.
Oh, Johnny.
Yes, I'll always remember till the day I die. Cry, Johnny, remember me.
Well, that's all we've time for now.
The following day, every record shop in the country almost was inundated with requests for Johnny Remember Me. And it went to number 1. So it did have a unique promotion.
Come on, get to
I was absolutely astonished because it all happened so quickly. And there I am, sitting at number 1. I remember being ushered into EMI Studios to see Sir Joseph Lockwood and his fellow directors, and they started discussing my career as a singer. There was a pause in the conversation, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, but you know, I appreciate and I'm very flattered that you should be sort of discussing this. But I said, I'm actually not a singer, I'm an actor, and if you want me to sing, perhaps it might be advisable if I took lessons." And there was a sort of pregnant pause, and Sir Joseph Lockwood leant forward and he said, "My dear boy," he said, "we don't want you to learn how to sing." He said, "If you learn how to sing, we'll never sell another record. We don't want trained singers. We want what you've got."
EMI's head, Sir Joseph Lockwood, was one of a group that controlled the music industry. Homosexuality was still illegal, so it was largely unspoken, but they shared a common interest in the young Brill-creamed idols.
There was a gay fraternity, but the point is we didn't know it was a gay fraternity. Joe Meek, Robert Stigwood, Larry Parnes, Joe Lockwood, and a few others were part of a fraternity who were sort of promoting young boys and trying to make them... But I suppose it needed their enthusiasm to get this pop thing on, you know, get it going.
The live show was an essential component for success as a top pop star. Johnny Remember Me was quickly followed by another smash, Wild Wind, which also topped the charts and earned him a silver disc for its sales.
Take all the troubles that I want far away, wild wind.
I was asked to go on television and sing both songs with the Billy Cotton Band, and Billy Cotton himself presented me with the silver discs on television. Well, that really was an ordeal. I mean, singing with a big band.
Wild wind. Take all the troubles that I want to lose far away, wild wind.
Topping the charts and with fans clamouring for live shows, John was forced to tour the country with other rockers on packaged road tours.
It wasn't the normal run-of-the-mill sort of pop rocker, you know. He had quite a distinguished voice, talking voice, and you know, an actor's voice. And they probably thought, who the hell is this?
Wild wind, my time is done.
he said, in the instrumental break, he said, I'd like to do a little dance. You will forgive me, won't you? I thought, what's he doing? We're supposed to be rock and roll, supposed to be like, oh, I'm rock and roll, like, I swear, and that, and go with women. He's gone on, he's done this number, and they've done the instrumental break, and he's done this dance. I can't do it in here. He's done this dance across the stage. He's got this sort of thing, he's worked it all out. They went absolutely mental.
I thought there's only one way to do this, and that's to play it as an actor. So I'm going to go out and be a pop star.
The moment I saw you, I knew that I'd love you. And a voice from above said, son, this is she. The stars were gleaming as I kissed you, and a voice from above said, son, this is she. She you will love for all eternity. Oh, she who will be your one and only love. I knew that someday love would come to me, and the voice from above said, son, this is...
I think he was sort of like overwhelmed by it all, you know, he didn't really understand it. He couldn't understand why they had this sort of, this fame. But I mean, he was good on stage, he was well produced. And it went down, he used to go down a storm. He never heard anything, mind, because there was so much screaming and shouting going on, he didn't know what he was singing.
It was deafening. All these girls screaming, those high-pitched screams. You couldn't really hear yourself sing anyway. I'm sure the audience couldn't hear you sing. And if you did get into any trouble, all you had to do was sort of flip a hip. The screams would sort of go up and, you know, so it didn't matter if you forgot lyrics or whatever.
John Leyton was the biggest singer around. He released an album and further singles, which were hits, if not huge smashes.
Don't you leave me all alone.
It was enough to go to town shopping for my mother. She needs some tortillas and chili pepper.
Manager Robert Stigwood decided the time was right to assume the role of record producer. He was in charge of John's subsequent records, recorded at EMI's Abbey Road studios.
I'm just a fool who's been treated so cruel.
Here's another way I can make some money, make some hit records and become a record producer. And that's probably, he thought maybe, well, this is easy, but obviously it's not that easy. We had to move on from the style of Johnny Remember Me and Wild Wind. We had to switch to other styles, other sorts of songs.
I always sung songs I was told to sing. I never really said, I didn't really like that song. A lot of songs I didn't particularly like, but I sung them because they said, oh no, this is a great song.
Whisper to me softly while the moon...
And then I would be sort of bullied into singing it in a certain way.
Say it to me gently.
They'd tell me, do a bit of Elvis, make the voice quiver.
Make love to me. Make love to me. Kiss me once again before we say goodnight.
I'm not Elvis, I'm me. I want to sing it like I sing it. I leave Elvis Presley to sing it like he sings it. But so there were a few sort of directorial problems, if you like.
So help me, dear, chills run up my spine. But don't you know I love you so? I won't be happy until you're mine. When
62, 63, I was really at the height of sort of my singing career. And in 1962, a man called John Sturges, an American film director. John Sturges directed Magnificent Seven, Gunfight at the OK Corral, many, many more. But he came over to England to cast The Great Escape.
I love you, Mabel. I love you as much as I am able.
And he offered me the role. of Willie the Tunnel King alongside Charles Bronson. We must have been about 3 or 4 months into making The Great Escape, and John Sturgis came up to me and he said, "Hey John, I hear you're a singer." And I said, "Oh, didn't you know?" He said, "No, I had no idea." I thought maybe one of the reasons that I got The Great Escape was on the back of the fact that I had a lot of success as a singer, because, you know, everybody thinks about box office. But he had no idea.
It was my pleasure to welcome back to this country a young man who's undoubtedly one of Britain's finest talents. He's been away in Germany and Hollywood making a film, as you know, called The Great Escape. The dynamic, Mr. Fabulous in person, Johnny Leyton! Shout, shout, knock yourself out, come on, yell, yell, loud and swell.
Returning to his singing career after making The Great Escape, John was still as popular as ever, and he continued to tour the UK and abroad, although the hits were declining. The music scene was changing with the emergence of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. The era of the solo rock and roll singer was coming to an end.
Knock yourself out, come on, yell, yell.
At the beginning of '64, I did a tour with various people. It was my tour, and I sort of topped it, and there was this band, the Rolling Stones.
We all can do, turn up the jukebox mighty loud.
Robert Stigwood promoted that, you see, and that was his stable of stars, and we were just brought in to add ticket sales, and unfortunately for everybody, we took over.
When I came on, these girls would go, "We want the Stones, we want..." I couldn't do it, I couldn't perform.
I'm not being big-headed, but the kids just didn't want to hear anything else.
I said the joint was rocking, going round and round. Yeah, reeling and rocking, what a crazy sound. And they never stopped rocking till the moon went down.
It became exceedingly difficult for me to go on after them.
Had to take me a chance.
On about the third night, John said, "I think you should close, and I'll do the other bit. I'll go on before you, and Mike Sarn can close the first half." And it was mutually agreed, and there was no sort of cockiness with us about it or disappointment from him. He just saw the writing was on the wall. You know, it was as they say, a new wind was blowing, you know, and he was one of the sort of old school.
The likes of me, for instance, we'd put on silk mohair suits, sparkly suits, and you know, shirts and maybe a tie. And I mean, you really looked the business.
It felt artificial and phony, and it's like seeing the future catch up with you very quickly and sort of wipe you out.
But for me, it didn't matter, because I wanted to get back to acting anyway, and singing was actually getting in the way a bit.
Immediately following that 1964 tour, John signed for the film The Guns of Batazi, starring opposite Peter Sellers' new wife, Britt Ekland.
I seemed to have a reputation in those days of certain leading ladies. I tended to sort of take out to dinner and see socially, which I have to be honest with you, I had every intention of doing with Britt Ekland, even though she was Mrs. Sellers at the time. But anyway, yeah, he seemed to be slightly worried about it, and she was ordered to leave the film because of his concern.
Her name, Mia Farrow, 19-year-old daughter of Maureen O'Sullivan. She's been picked to replace Britt Ekland. Britt, you remember, was starring in Guns of Batazi when she decided to fly to Hollywood to be near her husband, Peter Sellers. Now the part will be played by this cool, blonde newcomer who took this press call at Pinewood just before going on the set.
I searched as Mia Farrow instead, yeah.
Got a feeling like I'm dreaming.
But that year I did the tour with the Rolling Stones, then I did Guns of Batazi. Then I actually did another film called Every Day's a Holiday with Mike Sarn.
Mine since you came along. Every day's a holiday. Listen to me, you pretty thing. Call me
say you do.
Unable to compete with the bluesy music of the Beatles and the Stones, John signed a 3-picture deal with 20th Century Fox. He was off to Hollywood to star opposite Frank Sinatra. Not bad for a has-been pop star.
Buonasera, Signorina, Buonasera.
I was doing Von Ryan's Express. We were doing the interiors and on a stage in 20th Century Fox. Mia was on the next stage doing Peyton Place. So Mia came to visit me on the set of Von Ryan's Express. And I only turned my back a minute, just 1 minute. And there she is talking to Frank Sinatra. That night she calls me, says, "John, what do I do?" I said, "What do you mean, what do you do?" She says, "Frank has asked me to Palm Springs for the weekend." I said, "Keep me out of it, I want to work in this town." So off she went to Palm Springs, and of course the rest is history. She became Mrs. Sinatra. So I feel I had a hand in that marriage.
Over the next 20 years, John Leyton enjoyed a Hollywood career acting in epics Krakatoa, East of Java and The Idol. He even had his own television series, Jericho. He also became a successful producer and businessman. However, once the movie roles became scarcer, he was drawn back to Britain, and surprised to discover that his early hits were still being played on the radio, and there was a demand for him to perform again.
It seems that it's kind of come back full circle to the point where these old songs are not just acceptable once again, but have enormous nostalgic interest.
I persuaded him to sort of come out to go back on the road, you know. I said, because there's people out there who'd love to see you again, which I proved right. The knickers were still being thrown on the stage, apart from the fact they were slightly bigger than they were in the 60s, but...
You know, I'd always seen John as basically a very fine actor who sings. So when he joined the Solid Gold Rock and Roll Tour, I was concerned. But he proved us all wrong. It became really an integral part of the show.
As somebody said to me in 1964, "You'll be back in 30 years' time doing these shows," I would have said, "No way." I love every minute of it. The only difference now is that nobody screams. So you've actually got to get up and sing.
Yes,